So our application is working fairly well now, and we can actually add subjects, and it will check for duplicates, and it will give us messages when values are added and when duplicate values are being added. The thing that it's not currently doing is it is not persisting any values into database, and every time the application is restarted, the data is lost. So what we'll be doing in this screencast is we will look into how to use Mongoose to store our data into a MongoDB database. So Mongoose is ORM for MongoDB. So what we'll do now is we will install Mongoose using npm, and then once it's installed, we will use TDD with Mocha to create a models factory function that we can use to configure our Mongoose and get reference to a subject model. So we will create some tests for our models here. So we create the models.test.js, and then once we have that file, we will set up a Mocha function, and we will call the describe function, and we'll basically say that what we want to do. We'll say models should be able to do certain things, and then we'll call it, and then we'll have a it function that will do the actual work for us. In this case, it should store the subject to MongoDB. Using the require module, we import the assert module so that we can run some asserts in our test. So we'll just do a simple assert 1 to 2 that should fail. So now if I go out, run that using Mocha, that should fail. So now at least our test is working. Using TDD, we'll start creating the code that we want to have. So I'll create the instance of the models factory function, and then I'll say I'm going to give that a link to my MongoDB database instance. So we say MongoDB, that should be running on my local host, and we'll call the database tutors. And then based on that, the models function should connect to that database internally, and then allow me to create some subjects. So now I'm going to use models, and then I'm going to say models dot subject, and then we're going to say dot create, and then we're going to say I'm going to create a subject that's got a name. So I have subject, say name, and then I'm going to call it the test subject, and then once it's stored, it's going to call a callback, which can give an error if something goes wrong. So in this case, we will use the done function provided by Mocha that help us to test asynchronous functions. So in this case, we have error here. So if something goes wrong, so if I run that now, it should fail because there's no models function, which is fine. So I'm going to import that now using the require statement. So models, and then once I've got that configured, what is going to happen, so it will fail again because models doesn't exist, which is 100% correct. So we run that, it fails. So now what we actually need to do is you need to create that models function, so touch in the file models.js, and then we basically want to go in models and we want to start setting it up. So we're going to say, okay, I don't need to do that. So module.exports function, so function here, and then I want the Mongo URL to come in here, which is basically a connection string to the Mongo database. And then what I want to do is I want to import Mongoose, the library we want to use to connect to Mongo, and then I want to connect to my database. Then I want to say Mongo URL, and once I have that, I want to set up a subject model. This is a constant subject, and I say mongoose.model, and then I can say this is a subject, and then we're going to have the name field, which is a string. Then once I have that, I'm going to export this from the function by returning subject. So now I'm going to say return subject. So now whoever's requiring this module will be able to get hold of the subject function. If I run my test now, let's see. Oh, so it's working. Okay, so now we're going to see what's happening in our database. So connecting to Mongo, I go to my tutors database, and I'm going to say db.tutors. I'm going to show the collections first. So now we can see there's a subjects collection there. So now I want to say db.subjects.find. See, there's some data in there, some data from previous tests seemingly. So let's remove all the data from the collection. And let's run our test. So once, two. So looking at the database now, there should be 2 entries in Mongo. Find it again, find there's 2 entries. Great. So what I want to do now, I want to change my test in such a way that my test will check whether it works successfully. Currently we just run the test and we say if there's no error it will say it passed, but what I want to do now is we actually want to use Mocha so that it will clear out the database before each test. So there's some hooks in Mocha, so which can be run before each test. We'll use the before each hook in Mocha to clean out the subjects collection. So I'm just showing you here that what hooks we are getting. There's hooks there. So looking at that, there's a before hook, after hook, before each. We'll be using the before each hook in our test. So we'll say before each. And we'll set that up. We'll have this get a callback. And then I'll move models out so that I can use it in the before each hook. And then we're going to change the code there to be able to have some data we could reuse. So data, name, subject. Then when I create it now, I'm going to say subject data there. And then now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to look for subjects after I've created the subject. So I'll find all the subjects in this collection. We'll look for looking at names, see how many of those where the name is the test subject would be there. And then we add subjects, so the callback will return, if there's no error, it will return the number of subjects. So in this case I will say assert.equal. Then I want to make sure there's only one subject that's been returned. So in this case subject.length. Then when I'm done doing that, run that. So currently it's failing because there's more than one subject in the database. So now what we want to do is we want to make sure that we, before that test run, that we remove all the subjects that's in the database. So in this case I say remove everything. So callback when everything is done. So in this case we're going to do done error here again, the callback from the done function. So now let's run this. Okay, so now it's working. So I'll run it over and over again, and if I look in my database, you see there's only one entry for that test subject. So that's working great. So the thing that we want to do now is really, we want to, when we write our test, we want to use a specific test database. So we actually want to use the tutors-test database instead of tutors. So looking at this now, so if we show the databases, you see there's not a database for that now. But as soon as I run my test for the first time, you should see, so now I run test using the new tutors test database. I go back to, you see there's tutors test database now. So I can use it now and look inside of it. My test data should be inside of there now. So now I have everything set up correctly. Look at that, so there's one entry in my database.